So, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you to this our session this morning. I hope everybody had a very fantastic weekend. A number of events were taking place all across the country, and we'd like to welcome back everybody who has been part of that journey, especially the one with Mike Van Deventer, and also the guys who went to Igaga, and also the guys who were in Tanga. I know Teddy was in Tanga. The people are all over the place building the business, and we don't take it for granted. And we thank God that we're able to all get back in one piece. This morning, we are going to focus on how you tell your story. I'm really going to just go through the basics. I think this is something that I continue to work on day by day. The people we have in the team that are exceptional storytellers, you know, and it's important that you appreciate that telling your story is actually a skill. It is a skill that you can develop from time to time. You can be able to improve that skill with time. And of course, the more times you reach out, the more times you talk to people and you tell your story, the better you become. Okay. I remember when I started the business, this is one of the things that I struggled with. Have I perfected it? No. Even after 18 years in the business, I don't feel like I tell my story to the best. There's sometimes I share my story and I'm like, oh, I've forgotten this and I've forgotten that, you know. But I think one of the things I learned along the way that was very critical. I think I've learned this from some of the company executives and also Jerry Brasfield and also Charlie, you know, tell your story the way you told it when maybe you first became director or when maybe you became a senior manager, because as much as we get all these improvements and as much as we get our story improves every other day, that original touch to the story is very important. And sometimes because we have talked to people and we have told our story so many times, we kind of at one point try to complicate it and make it very complicated for ourselves and also for others when we are sharing our stories. But to keep it simple and straight, it's important that you just follow the basics. And well, I must say some of the people that I've found that are very good at sharing their stories are people who tell their story the same way, in a basic way, every time they tell their story, you know? And at first I used to wonder even that, how come this story can be very fascinating, you know? And yet it's the same thing I'm hearing every other time, every other day, every other time we have a presentation, you know, but it's because it's a very simple, straightforward, basic story that you're putting across, you know, nothing complicated, nothing, how can I put it? It doesn't change. It's the same story every time you hear it, you know, and that's one of the things that, of course, a lot of the distributors struggle with. Sometimes I've worked with some people who, even myself, who at one point you tell your story and you tell it, but wait a minute, maybe I have deviated away from the way I should be sharing my story. So how do we tell our story? We do have a wedge of interest, as you can see on your screens right there on one side, and then the X bit has the time. One of the things I will never forget, I think it was Jerry Brasfield. I think it was either 2018, 2019. We had a presence team meeting for Africa in South Africa, and we were just flown to South Africa for that presence team meeting. And Jerry Brasfield was going to be there, and he came to speak, and he talked about how to tell your story. And this is where he started from. He talked about the wedge of interest versus time. And emphasis was put that each of those bits, I've not put them there, but I'm going to go through each of those sections, represents something very important. The first one here when people are still, when people don't want to listen to you, when they're not that interested, we have what we call an ID that you should be able to put across very well. And then in that ID, you have a bit of logic, you have a solution to offer, and then you have a way you close it off. So basically, your story rolls in that kind of format. And we shall just go ahead and let's look at the ID very quickly. How does the ID work? So your ID is actually part of increasing someone's wedge of interest. Yeah. And if someone does not identify with you, if someone does not find that you have something in common with them, if you've not been able to make a good connection with the prospect, they will actually not open up their hearts and ears to listen to the rest of your story. That's why sometimes as we go out there trying to make things happen, one of the challenges you'll find is that the moment you do not connect with the prospect, it's difficult for you to then go in and see how you can explain the logic. How the logic is basically how does the TNN work? How does the LDC work? How does the stories that we have on products, how do the products actually work? Why? Because you have not connected the prospect very well. So your ID is your story, and it's what connects or relates you with your prospects. It begins with what your name is, how old, if necessary. Sometimes if you are among a certain group of people, it's important to mention how old you are, because then it appeases, it kind of relates with them. Okay. Where do you come from? That's also something that can create a very important connection from time to time. Your profession creates a very important connection. Your marital status connects a very important connection. Your children and grandchildren could also connect a very important connection. I mean, you talk about the fact that, you have about 5 grandchildren. You can be able to connect with other people in the audience that also have grandchildren. So your IDs are really more of something like that, and this is very, very critical. It's also important to talk about where the opportunity found you and what prompted you to start. Okay. These are some of the questions we answer as we share our story. So what were you doing before Neolife? Probably it could be a profession. It could be something else that you are doing before Neolife. But it's important for people to understand that before you came to see this opportunity, there was something else that you were doing. Okay. Where were you working? Sometimes people don't want to hear a particular workplace, but you can generalize it. Government institute, private sector, an oil company. I mean, you don't have to necessarily mention it as in MTN or as in this particular company, maybe for trying to identify with a bit, but you could mention that you've worked in the banking sector, for example, okay? Or where do you work if you are part-time? That's also very important, because you want to relate with people, especially if you're doing this business part-time. People that will oftentimes relate with you are people who are also working, and sometimes as we share our stories, we forget to share the fact that some of us do the business part-time. So what motivated you to want to start your own business? That's also very important. Key motivational points as to why people start Neolife is something that people can identify with when they are listening to you. When I started, I wanted an addition of 500,000 because I noticed that my salary would not be enough eventually when I finished the university. Okay, so for me, that was a very key motivational thing. I also started because I noticed that at the end of the day, it's the people that are in business, that are in life where you want to be. And if I am eventually going to start up a business, why not start now? Okay, and perhaps do it part-time as I do my work. Those are all thoughts that were going through my mind when I started. Sometimes people will start because of a product. We have had a number of stories because of a product. So when you talk about the fact that you started because of a product, please mention the product, how it helped you, what were you feeling before, and what were you feeling after, and how, because of that product, how you now are able to do the business. It's important for people to relate the product to the business side as well. Yeah. Was it a situation you were faced with? Yeah, sometimes people become a part of this opportunity because maybe the economy, as they were talking about it these days. Yeah, but it's important to just paint the situation so well so that the person can be able to relate with you. Okay. So basically say something about your circumstances before starting the opportunity and what motivated you to start. That is part of the ID when you're sharing with someone. Okay. Now, guys, these things comes with a lot of practice. Not a lot of practice, but it comes with putting in an effort. It's not natural. Yeah. So if you find that we share these things and sometimes when you start out, they're not natural, it is okay. That is how it's supposed to be, because at the end of the day, it is not something that you've been accustomed to. So allow yourself to learn and practice with time. The next thing that you discuss about your ID or your story is what happened when you started. People want to know, now that you got started, what happened? Okay, what doubts did you have? How were they resolved? Okay, I thought I was going to maybe spend some days going from one office to the next, but then I was taught how to build this business professionally through making appointments with different individuals that I already knew in my life. Okay, how did you adjust? How did you commit? It's important to tell people about how you did the basics. This is basically, when you talk about what happened when you started, you're basically talking about the basics. What trainings did you attend? What trainings impacted you? What events impacted you? What did you do? Did you make a profit? Did you make a commission? Okay. Though of course that now comes on later also in the benefits side of it. But for example, when you started, we're talking about the products. Did you use what changed when you started using the products? Those are the kind of things that are important when you're now sharing your Neolife story with the different bits of people. Okay, try and keep a lot of the things that you're sharing at that particular moment positive, because you don't want to be sharing negative with the prospects that you. Yeah, of course, sometimes we'll ask you, so was it all good and everything? And no, it wasn't all good. Of course, I had to take time to learn. Were there people that said no? Of course, there are people that said no. But you see, you only do that now when you're in a one-on-one and you're having a discussion. But when you're being called up, you want to share your story. We have been requested to share your story, or you have an opportunity in front of your fellow distributor to share your story. Just kindly just tell us what happened when you started. Okay. Whether it was activities that you did or trainings that you attended or products that you use, just tell us exactly what happened. How has your life changed since you started? This is when we now bring in the benefits. We know that we do have a product use benefit to this business. We talk about income. We talk about, let me see, yes. You talk about, and sorry, just a minute. Okay. You talk about, someone is muting and unmuting. Okay. You talk about the benefits, talk about the income, the product use. Usually product use is oftentimes fast because it's important that even if the person you're talking to does not appreciate the business side, but at least they come along and use the products. So you talk about the income. When you talk about the income, ladies and gentlemen, we are living at a time where people want a little bit of more proof. So try and be more specific as you talk about the benefits, okay? If it's product use, be specific to what product and how the products have changed your life. Don't just say they worked for me, they are very good, I'm now happy. You know, that doesn't make sense. Give us some kind of detail, you know, how have the products exactly helped you? You know, perhaps maybe you used to spend a lot of your days dosing at a certain time, and how when you started using Pro Vitality or Trianine, now you're able to wake up as early as possible. When it comes to the income, talk about your income all the way through to director, how you started, with your first income, the second income, fourth income. And if you're not a director, you can talk about the future income that you're going to earn, but tell us something about your first, second, and third income within the business. It's very important. And then the travel as well. You can talk about those first travels you've done. You know, when I started, I didn't travel straight away to San Francisco. I said by going, I think my first upcountry travel, if I remember very clearly, was actually the one that I was consciously aware of was to Soroti, you know. And it was a story I told for such a long time until then. Along the way, I went to Nairobi, crossed the border for the very first time. I was on the Nairobi streets. Then eventually, that was for the East African Convention. Then eventually to London, and then eventually to, you know, to a presence team, something. But at the end of the day, if you have not yet traveled, that's just okay. You don't have to tell us that you have not yet traveled. You can tell us you will eventually travel and you hope to travel to the next destination. Yeah, but please don't say we have not yet. I have not yet traveled, because it has a negative connotation. Yes, you have not yet traveled. Let the people who have traveled talk about travel. You talk about what you have benefited, not what you've not benefited. Okay. Personal development, personal growth is another very important benefit. And anybody by that gets into the business, your first 1, 2, 3 days are enough for you to even have your story ready, because you're already seeing the benefits from the business. How has the business affected your family? How else has benefited? Those are all things you can add to your story. And then, sorry, just a second. Okay. How do you see the future? That's important. You know, one of the things that we actually sell in Neolife is hope, is hope, is hope. And it's such a huge thing. That's why this part of your ID, this part of your story is very, very important. Okay. How do you hope your business will change in your life? It will change you in your life. Mention how much income you hope to make, if that's something you wish to do. I remember I used to do that quite a lot. I'll tell people I've been able to earn 200,000, but I look forward to earning 1.5 million shillings, like the way I have seen other people earning this income. You see, when you tell people where you are going, people are able to follow you. People are able to know what you're up to, you know. You can talk about the places you hope to travel, something to do with your dream chat. But you don't have to do so much. It doesn't have to be such a long story. I'm going to talk about the timings here just shortly. Yeah. But tell us about your next goal, you know, your manager, your senior manager, your director, executive manager goal. Yeah. And what is your ultimate goal? You don't have to say all of those, but just say something about your future that you think or you believe in, that you feel that can be able to help someone else have hope as well. Okay. And then last but not least, something that we sometimes forget is the bid for action. If and you've had these people say a number of things in bidding for action. If me that is I think this is Moses, that is HIV positive, can think positively, then I'm sure you that is HIV negative can also think positively. I know there's some other things he says in there, but that's basically what he's telling us. If you've had people say, if me, a teacher who sold my bed to start this business, I've been able to do it, I'm sure you can also do it. So there's some kind of bid for action. There's a way you challenge people to build the business. Okay. And I think that should be about that. One of the things that you want to avoid, and sometimes after this session, I've seen a lot of people trying to to do this, but it's just being professional. You want to avoid mentioning names of individuals and organization. You could easily bias people, you know. You want to avoid dragging your story, where you talk about I went, I stopped, I said hello, then the person came, and I remember he took me up to the chair, he sat me down. Those are things that we don't want to hear in your story. Be straight to the point. Yeah, but it's very important to just get to the point and say what you have to say in the most direct and obvious way as you can. Okay, avoid mentioning things plainly. I got a lot of money. How much money? Try and be a little bit more detailed. Things like my future is bright. Give some more detail when it comes to the future. Yes, we know the future is bright, but what is bright about that future? You know, what do you want to achieve in the next few months? Yeah. So as you do this, you'll find that you can actually use your story to sponsor a number of people. The more people you tell your story, the more you go back to your name list and keep on sharing your story with different people. Many times the people you've sponsored in the business, those people will grow because of your story, because of how you're helping your distributors sharing your story, and then eventually helping the distributors learn how to share their story. So when you talk and you are sharing with some people their story, please allow also the distributor to share their story. Let them participate in sharing their story, because it is people's personal stories that actually touch people's hearts. Okay, forget about the logic. Sometimes I've talked to people and I'm telling them how training works, the way we are supposed to be doing it, and so on and so forth. And yeah, the way we are supposed to be doing it, the way we're supposed to be working around it. And we have told a very good logic of how Supergrow works, how training works, how proprietary works, how LDC works. We have demonstrated. By the end of the day, it is your personal story that when you share your personal story, the person is able to identify with you. Okay. So in a nutshell, if you're taking a screenshot, that is how your story should look like. Identification, where the opportunity found you and what prompted you to start, what happened. Now, depending on what you are doing, so if you've been told to come in on a Zoom presentation, for example, on a Sunday evening, you can just prolong and give more detail in each of those areas for say 30 minutes, sorry, for 20 minutes, okay? If you're at Imperial or if you're at a company function, usually we want to use about 5 minutes, guys. We can't be there listening to your story for 10 minutes at a company event. You need to have to shorten it in a way that you respect people's time. If it is with a distributor, you're doing a one-on-one, that story can be shortened to also about 5 minutes. Okay, and you can also break it down where you tell part of it in the beginning, bring in the logic, and then you close it off with how do you see the future and the bid for action, or what other benefits you've been able to see. So you take the first three before you start onto the logic, which is logic. Okay, and then you go with the last three after. Okay, Riziki, please. So at the end of the day, it's very, very important that you just understand that bit. So if you're looking at taking something from this session, as I request maybe one or two people to just add to what I've just shared right now. Just I see on the call, I don't know if there's anything I've missed out on this area, and if there's anyone that can actually add to this conversation, you are very welcome at this point so that we can call it a day. Some of the best storytellers I've had over the years, Mrs. Kana just, I don't know, the same story every time she shares it is the same way I had it in 2005 when I just started the business. Maybe she could close our meeting with giving us the technique on how to be consistent, because people, we don't want to complicate this. You want to keep it as simple as possible. Same story, same information over the years. Of course, the things that improve, you could have gone to Zimbabwe last year and now going to Turkey. It's okay, it is fine. But somehow, somewhere, that story has to remain very simple and basic to the people, because the person who is listening to your stories, they're listening to it for the first time. Okay, they're listening to your story for the very first time, and they want to hear your story. I don't know if Mom is on the call, then we can close out a bit eventually.
Oh. Thank you, Andrew. Good morning, everybody. Well, this is very interesting. I thought that every time I tell my story, I keep building on something new. But basically, some of the things you have mentioned since I've been in the business for quite some time, I find that, of course, they are the same things. They are the same things. And it's so interesting that everyone has a story to tell. Everyone has a story to tell because all of us are unique. We all have different things which you have gone through. But then you must develop a sequence of how you tell your story. Because if you keep changing it, then you might forget some of the things which you need to to tell people. For example, I think I have one of the unique backgrounds of having lived for a long time. Graduated when I was several years ago, 1983, when most people were not yet born. And some of you have heard Dad's story. And the key thing he always mentions is that he was around during independence. And I think that tells you something about his age and what he has gone through. So for us, these are some of the catchwords which we use when we are telling our story. And then the other thing maybe which I always tend to talk about is my health, because that one I find it as a unique story. And I always build it around Jerry Brasfield's story, because he had a similar challenge just as mine. And it is a catchword because there are many people out there who have a problem with asthma. You either have a relative or you have a child. And this same story, it really brings out the issue that the products really work. And for me, it has worked. So that's something which I can never, forget. And then for me, when it comes to the benefits, the way I have structured it is in 5 parts. The first one, the benefit, I always talk about knowledge, the knowledge which I have got, because people, we don't take this knowledge for granted. Knowledge about nutrition, knowledge about marketing, knowledge about the products. And I think that's something which is a benefit, because we are what we are now because of the knowledge we have got from people. And I usually find that when I talk about knowledge about nutrition, many people tend to think that, yes, because of these products, I am a different person. I eat differently. I don't just treat my stomach like a dustbin. Then the second thing which I always talk about are the health benefits. That one I've already talked about. Then I talk about the income benefits. Then I talk about the personal development. And lastly, I talk about the lifestyle. So in a way, I structure it so that I don't forget what I need to say, because I know those are the things which I have to talk about. Let me repeat them: knowledge, health, income, personal development, and then lifestyle. That is where my story resolves. And then after that, you can always go for the bid for action. You tell people that, if I have benefited like this, if these are the things which we have got from this business, then you can also do it. So I think in a nutshell, these are some of the things which we need to master. You may have a different story. You may have a different way of saying it, but at the end of the day, what we want is to help other people, appreciate what you can get from this business. So make sure that you build your story. You have a sequence. You must have a style, and it must be catching. Make sure that it is catching. So in a way, that is what I have, Andrew, to tell the people on how I tell my story. And if you listen to it very carefully, you'll find that it is the same over and over again. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you. Thank you very much. And Jesse has added in the chat. Ma'am, sorry, Makau is asking knowledge, income, personal development, lifestyle.
It is knowledge, health, because when I reach health, that's when I talk about my asthma story. And then income is the third thing. Then personal development, and lastly, lifestyle.
All right.
That's the 5 things I do talk about.
Thank you very much. Jesse has mentioned to us that in addition to all this, please, what you say as you focus on what you say, focus on how you tell your story with a lot of passion and enthusiasm as well. Yeah, so that is very key in doing that as well. So